Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Growing Tech Fast, the condensed Org3D podcast in which conversations about growing SaaS startups are held with those who have grown them. Today, I'm joined by Marwan, CEO of Veeam. It's great to have you on the podcast today, Marwan. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, Holly. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Yeah, really excited to hear a little bit more about Veeam. If you just want to give us an introduction to what you guys do and what's special about you.
Yeah, thank you. So we at Veeam, we help businesses, small businesses, to pay and get paid, both domestic and cross-border. We handle accounts payable, accounts receivable for them. And we make it really simple to streamline their payments. So think of companies, for example, you're a company in the US, small business, and you want to send payments to the UK for some products you imported. The way Veeam works, you can log in to the system. All you need is an email address of the company in the UK, and you literally send, $10,000 to the UK company, who then picks up the payment, can make decisions on how they want to get paid, whether they want to, take the money on their card, on their bank account, keep it in a Veeam wallet, and the currency that they want to work with. They want to convert to GBP or keep it in USD or take it in euro. So, the customers on each end decide how they want to pay and get paid. We have about 110 countries we work with, over 80 currencies. We have about 400,000 businesses on that platform. And we started the company in 2014, and I raised over 115 million to date. Some of the investors include Kleiner and Google Ventures in California, and a number of banks around the world. We have Goldman, Truist, Silicon Valley Bank in the US, MUFG, and SBI in Japan, NAB in Australia, and NAB is National Australian Bank. Arab Bank in the Middle East. So we have a number of banks that invested in the company. So that's what we do in a nutshell.
Amazing. Yeah, it sounds like a great concept and a great company to work for. I mean, how is business at the moment? I've heard it's booming, especially this year.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, COVID has been an accelerant to growth in online digital services. In general. And so we have a good chunk of our customers are e-tailers, e-commerce, tech startups, tech services, online business services. And in general, what COVID did is it fueled these types of businesses and had an impact on any type of business that requires physical exchange of goods and services. Just by the way we have our customers laid out, we have a fewer number of retail businesses and physical businesses, and just a lot more online. And so the business has been great because our customers have been doing well. As customers use us to pay suppliers around the world, they pay labor. This is a big trend these days as well with COVID, since we're all on Zoom. One of the trends we're seeing in the market where customers use labor outside of the country they're in. They use services or labor in Philippines, Mexico, Brazil, India, Russia, Poland, so like all around the world. And this is an interesting trend at the moment, given that Zoom and this type of communication removes borders. And so what we do as well is we help our customers remove borders when it comes to payments and simplify movement of funds out of the company and back into the company. So that's why we've been seeing growth, and we have about 400,000 accounts on the platform.
Wow. Do you know what? That's really refreshing to hear after hearing so many companies really struggle with COVID. It's great to hear that it was the other way for you guys. So wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
And tell our listeners about your journey. So how did you start the company and where did the idea come from?
I used to have my own company before this, which I founded and sold to Western Union. It was a domestic payment method in the US. And when I got into Western Union, there was a really nice exposure into global payment systems. Just learning about all kinds of payments in Europe and Asia and in other parts of the world. And so one of the things that was surprising to me is how complicated payment systems get, especially when you're dealing outside of the country that you're in, and how nuanced it is to do payments in all these countries. And so I wanted to simplify all this. And so the idea of Veeam was essentially thinking of, like, when you buy coffee in the morning, you don't think of how you pay, you just do it. Your mind is somewhere else, like your mind is on email, on calendars, on like other things in your life. Payments is habitual. Whatever you have in your wallet, or your mobile phone, you pay and you move on. You kind of do it sort of in the back of your mind. Now, when you go to do business payments, especially when you do them cross-border, it goes from really simple to really complex. So you have to now think about your day. When do I need to do this payment? And I need to go get the SWIFT codes and pay wire fees, and I got to do it before cutoff times, and I got to figure out if my bank would let me do it online or not. So there's a whole bunch of planning that is required now to do the transaction. So I wanted to kind of get to a model where when you're doing international transactions, it is similar to buying coffee. You don't think about it, you just do it. Yeah. And I think for the environment we're in today with COVID and having an impact on global payments, I think global payments is going to be a bigger thing in the future than the way it was before. And so we need to find a way to streamline global payments. Now, the way we think of it, we kind of make it really simple for you to do domestic and global, and we go after customers that really benefit from both. That's why we started Veeam.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah, definitely. Great story, and I think a great reason to start a company. It makes sense. Okay. And going on to overcoming failure. So are there any particular moments that have triggered a change in your thinking or your approach to startup life?
Yeah, I think one of the things that, for anybody that's looking to start a company or in a startup at the moment, the startup world operates like differently than, other environments in that you kind of need to think about the things you do as a portfolio of bets or initiatives. And, what's important is to understand that and expect that not every single initiative is going to work. And so if something doesn't work and it's whether it's a mistake or just something that didn't go as planned or out of your control, like at the end of the day, if out of 10 initiatives, if 6 or 7 of them or 8 of them worked and the others didn't, that's all you need. Like, you just have to win more than you lose. That's basically it. And so in general, like if you are fixated on making sure that everything goes to plan the way you think the plan is going to go, you're going to generally have a hard time in startups, because in general, you don't know what's going to work. And so a lot of this is just trying different things. When they work, you do more of it. When it doesn't, you just move on. And so that is a fundamental sort of mindset that's needed to operate in this environment.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. Okay. And
the other thing I'd say is, like, think of every time something doesn't work, which we call failure. Think of it like an opportunity to learn what else can you do that's different for next time you try it. So it's not that the fact that it didn't work that's important, is understanding why it didn't work that can then be helpful for the next time you try something.
For sure. I mean, can you think of any specific examples where you've overcome failure in your career or even at Veeam?
Yeah, I mean, like, for example, we had a situation once where we had a a partner relationship we were working on. We spent a lot of time on it, a lot of effort. And we had signed the deal, and we were all like, fairly high up on expectations from that partnership. And then, when we started getting into details, the partnership, couldn't be implemented, and then it fell apart. And because it was a big thing, it had a real impact on our forecast for the next few quarters. And so that's an example of like a major setback that we had to go through. But you just learn to pick up, learn from it, and just move on and find other partners that have the ability to implement what we wanted to implement with that first one. Yeah. So that's an example of situations where we had to overcome a plan that didn't work out.
For sure, and I think that's the biggest takeaway of learning from every experience you're a part of, and that's how you develop. So brilliant. Okay, and we've discussed the low moments in startup life, but there's also many, many high moments. So can you think of maybe the best moment at Veeam you've had so far, or one of the best?
I have a customer that was telling me how thankful they are for the service because it helped them track their payments. It helped them simplify their payments. And he was telling me specifically about the payments he's been doing to all these markets, and going in detail around how he tracked the payments that were sent to his developers in Philippines, and he had a sales team in Mexico. And so he's telling me about how these payments were showing up on time, and how customers were his customers were happy. And that's an example. Like I think the most interesting thing for me when I hear it from customers about their perception of the service and what makes them delighted. Like that's the high moments in my day is listening to customer feedback, because it's like very energizing. It gives you a reason to keep building, keep changing, and making things better for our customers.
Sure, I mean that's surely the biggest motivation, or at least one of the biggest motivations, is for that kind of satisfaction that you've made customers happy. So that's great.
Yeah. Making a change in the industry as well.
Yeah, for sure. So going on to your personal development. So have there been any significant changes in your personal development while you've been on this journey? Have you noticed any?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is the third startup I'm in. Mm-hmm. And so I've been in startups and big companies. So I've gone through, building startups, being part of big environments and big companies, and adapting to the various sort of cultures and ways of doing things. And as you do more startups, you get more refined in the way to think about the problem statements and the approach that you built these companies. And so the day-to-day becomes better. And also different startups have different environments to them. So when you do them multiple times, you figure that not every startup is the same. They all have different trade-offs to them. And you kind of adapt and figure out how to survive in the environment that you have in front of you. And that's like the biggest thing that gets refined, and it becomes better over time. It's kind of like doing it multiple times in multiple settings, and sometimes in multiple industries. You get enough color on each setting that helps you to do it better the next time.
Absolutely, yeah. And who are your role models, whether that's in personal life or in the industry?
I think of like what Amazon did, Jeff Bezos in particular. I mean, it's just been an amazing transformation of an industry where from like humble beginnings and apartments and very focused on a very specific segment. And now you look at Amazon and it's like, wow, I mean, it's so dominant in e-commerce. It's an example of transformation in an industry, how rapid it goes, how big it gets. And what's amazing about that story is, when it first got started, nobody even thought it'll get this big. And I would argue that companies like Amazon, Google, like all these tech startups, actually have a lot more room to go. So they'll be like a lot bigger and a lot more influential longer term as well. But in general, the reason why I think this is super interesting, because generally people have a hard time thinking about how big something goes. They underestimate it. And they also, in general, we all underestimate the amount of effort and work required to get there. So, the folks that, and Jeff Bezos in particular, I mean, they work nights and nights to get there. So it's a long, tough journey, but it's a journey that has so much impact in the industry. It's inspiring to see all this change.
Yeah, absolutely, so inspiring. Okay, and then what are some of the best bits of advice you've been given in your career?
I think it's a combination of things. Like, you got to have persistence in startups. You got to think. You gotta be able to overcome setbacks, which is part of the reason you persist. But you gotta be able to connect short term with long term. Like, it's an interesting thing in startups. It's like, because you don't have a lot of long term runway, you gotta act as if you only have a couple of quarters. But also the work that you do short term needs to connect to a long term vision. So you need to be able to organize things in a way where you can make an impact short term. These things need to connect to a long term story and long term vision. And you kind of need to push it through and be persistent about it, because there's a good chance that the odds are stacked against you anyway.
Yeah. And
so when it doesn't get there, you got to be able to just stick with it. And that's the key thing.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. And then lastly, what one thing should our audience be doing?
I think entrepreneurship is an amazing thing. It's like it's kind of like one of the things you have to do in life. It's just like I would encourage everybody that's listening, if you have an idea or a business idea or a startup idea, to just do it. Like, don't overthink it, because like, it's you'll learn a lot. It's like a crash course in an MBA. Instead of paying for MBA, you can actually practice and potentially build something big out of it. And even if it doesn't work out, that you'll learn a lot from it, and ends up being significant enhancement to your skill set and to your outlook on life in general.
Yeah, I think that's some really great advice for our listeners to take away, actually. And I think, yeah, I second it. Well, thank you so much, Marwan, for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing your story and hearing all about Veeam and how it all started. And thank you to everyone listening for tuning in to Growing Tech Fast.